What's up, guys? Welcome to my show that I'm doing, HCT, A Year in Review. It's not that complicated, and what I have to say isn't that revolutionary, but the basic idea here is that I think it's important for us as a community to speak out in a more intelligible and credible way than yelling on Twitter. And so I'm sort of trying to give an example of what you can do to sort of try and implement some change. It shouldn't be too long. I have some ideas I want to present. I have some logic behind them that I'm going to go through, but it's a pretty straightforward show, so let's jump into it. Alright, so I have 4 main topics I want to cover. The first one is the actual preliminaries that you qualify for. I'm going to explain each topic as I go through, so I'm not going to delve into it too much. The second one is the Open Cup experience and what that means. Third one is ladder. And the fourth one is player culture and player health. After that, I should have some time, so I'd like to do a Q&A, and it's pretty simple. I'm not going to take questions from chat because I think that's a little hectic and hard to do. I think it's easier if you just tweet at me, and I have my Twitter shamelessly plugged in every single scene here. So you will always be able to find my Twitter throughout the show. So just tweet at me your questions, and I'll pick from the ones that I think are pretty good, and we'll do a little Q&A at the end. That's pretty much it. Let's get into topic number 1, which is going to be preliminaries and playoffs. So I'd say that this is a point where the least amount of change has to come about, except for one major thing. But there are just a lot of little things that sort of come together in this that can be really frustrating. So the big change I'd like to see in terms of preliminaries is I would like to see there be a set number of points to qualify rather than it being based off of being top 64 in your region. Now, Blizzard would know significantly better than I would about what that cutoff should be because they have access to way more data on the subject. And I don't think it would be that hard to project a number. And if you really were concerned about making it too difficult, I don't think it would be that bad if you undershot the number by a lot. And then even if a lot of people qualified, you could work from there. Like it's a process to get it right. So I think people would understand if you change the system this drastically that you might get it wrong the first couple times, and then you could continue to improve. But the reason why I think this is really important, well, I guess there are a number, but number 1 is it's really difficult when you're trying to speculate how many points you're going to need. Like going into the last month, I think that this month in particular, there's a lot of outrage. A lot of people missed prelims by 1 point. And that it feels really bad because most people were really confident in their predictions, and I'd say over 50% of the time they would have made prelims. Like, I know in Europe a lot of people went for 24 points because it was a very reasonable thing. Like, it was very likely to qualify them. A lot of people on NA went for 17. And I just think that if the speculation part doesn't really play into what the game's about at all, and it feels really bad when you play the odds. It's like, oh, I'm 80% to qualify if I take my finish here. Whereas if I play and lose, then I don't qualify ever. So I'll just take my odds. And then when you lose, it feels bad. I think people knowing what they're going for. Also, I think from like a more aspiring player standpoint, if you're coming up and you're trying to make a name for yourself, I think looking at a number of points and saying, okay, this is the bar I have to reach. As opposed to, oh, this mythical top 64. I'm not top 64 in NA. I can't do this. I think that having a concrete goal that you can achieve is so much. I think it's really important. I think it would drive aspiring players more, and it would be less frustrating for more seasoned players as well. So that's sort of why I'd like to see that change. I have a little more to say on the matter, but I'll wait until I go over some of my other points. This next one's a lot less significant. This is just sort of like a Hearthstone culture thing in general, and it's that I don't think administrators really understand what the playing experience is like. And I will say up front that my admins at my prelims venue, which has been the cave for like the past 4 prelims, have been fantastic. They're very good about not interrupting you in between games. They know to just kind of wait back, let you do your thing. And I'm really appreciative of that. They're really good admins. But I've heard stories from other people about in the middle of games, admins are asking players for things like, what was this score, what was that score, move this item. I don't think they understand the implications of what they're doing, because I know I have a personal story from Brian the Rat Cortade, who, when he was giving his explanation of it, he said he was doing all this focused hand tracking around one, like he was really trying to concentrate, and then an admin really quick was like, move your phone off the table, which is an okay request. He wasn't using it or anything. I don't think Rat was cheating, obviously he wasn't, but the admin just didn't want it there. But at the same time, Rat looked away to move his phone, and then his opponent played a card, and he had no idea where it came from. And that just, like, it's so disturbing to your game plan and shattering to what you're trying to do when you just lose that information. You lose everything when they play a card you haven't seen when you're trying to track their hand. It's just so difficult. So I really think that, I don't think admins understand that, and I don't blame them, because the culture around Hearthstone's always just been like, oh yeah, you can get up, come back, it's not a big deal. But I think that they have to understand that we really need to be able to focus the whole time, because there are little intangibles that we're gaining edges off of that get eliminated when we are being disturbed in the middle of games. So I would like to see that. It's not have changed so much as just like that come about as like a form of respect to the players. I would like to see changes to the number of Swiss rounds. We did the math at one of the prelims, because I know that at this most recent NA prelims, I think it was like Sidonia, Racy, Noblord, and someone else were like 9th, 10th, 11th, and 12th. And obviously it doesn't really matter who finishes 9th, 10th, but these are like more vocal people. So they were on Twitter and they were complaining. They were salty because they were like, oh, we went 5-2. Other people went 5-2 and made it. And it's like understandable. They didn't go about it in the most constructive way, but they were upset and they had a right to be. And that just feels really bad when you perform as well as other people, but due to tiebreakers, which are more or less arbitrary, because the people in top 64, like, it's not that different who you're playing against. So I don't think like tiebreakers actually factor in nearly as much as in some other games. But it just feels really bad to go the same score as someone else and not make it. So we looked at a Swiss triangle, which is what the Swiss format's based around. It's like a Pascal's triangle. I think it's a little different, maybe. I don't entirely recall. Chalky knows a lot more about it. But we looked at it and we wondered what would happen if we just upped the number of rounds and at what point we would get a clean cut. And it turns out if you up it to 8, there are only like 2 people who don't make it, or 3 off of tiebreakers. So rather than like the majority of 5-2s not making it right now and a couple making it, it would more be like a lot of 6-2s make it and only the unlucky few 6-2s don't make it, which is like a lot more healthy, I think. Like at DreamHack, every 7-2 made it for Atlanta, which was really nice. Like you had a clear goal, there was no speculation. That felt really good. And so I think I would like to see that change, just because it's not that big of a logistical implication to add 1 round as far as I know. I could be wrong, and that's actually a big point of this whole talk, is that I could be wrong about everything I'm saying. I have reasoning and logic and reason to believe that my changes would improve the system, but I don't actually know. The main point is that I just want to present my ideas in a way where they're worth thinking about, and that people can look at them and say, okay, I like this. This is what I don't like. I would change this. And then we're starting having a real conversation as opposed to just bickering back and forth on Twitter about which region is better and why EU is so much better because they take 7 more points to qualify. I just don't think the conversation around this topic's been very productive, so I kind of wanted to present my thoughts in a more cohesive way. All right, change number 4, and this idea is actually pulled almost exclusively from how Magic the Gathering structures their Pro Tours. But there's a way to structure your top 8 matches that rewards seeding more. And I don't know if this would be better. I'm more up in the air on this, but I think it's an interesting concept to at least be thought about more. And I know Blizzard's, obviously in their broadcast, like the casters can't say Magic, they're very against that, and that's fine, but I don't think it's a bad thing to model yourself after a card game that's been around for very long time, 30 years or something. So clearly Magic has some experience. They've actually redacted this way of doing things, so it could be wrong, but I think it's worth exploring, giving more reward to people who do well in Swiss rounds. And let me show you what I'm talking about. This is how Magic used to structure their top 8s. And so there was a lot of incentive for being the 1st and 2nd seed as opposed to the 7th and 8th. As you can see, there's a whole extra 2 rounds. And I think that this is like I think it's an interesting structure to explore, and maybe not this specific one, but something like it. Something where if you 7-0 the Swiss, maybe you're just through to the championship. Something like that. Because multiple times, I know Prokhorov in winter and Sweep from APAC in winter, they both went 7-0 in the Swiss, and then they lost their top 8 match to someone who was 5-2. And that feels so bad to go 7-1 and not make it, whereas your opponent went 6-2 and did. It's very disheartening to do so well in the Swiss and then not see anything come of it because it just went to a single LM top 8. So I like to see them explore formats more in top 8. I think that would be interesting. I don't actually know if this is better or not, but irrespective, I think this is important. Okay, so that's more or less what I have to say on prelims. If I think of anything, I'll come back to it, but Opens, are actually, I think, the one where I want to make the most drastic changes. So let me preface this by saying that I think opens really, really suck right now. I think that they are really miserable for players to play in. I don't know really anyone who enjoys Open Cups. I think that that's not really because of what Open Cups represent. I think that the idea of tournament mode for casual players is really cool, and I think that that could be really fun, but the logistics that go into Open Cups, the implications of how much time they take, the poor adminning that goes into them, all of it comes together to just make a terrible experience. It's really, they're very miserable. They are, in my opinion, well, I have some issues with ladder, but open tournaments are probably more frustrating than ladder overall, because you can just put in so much time, and you don't even feel like anything happened. On ladder, you can put in time, you can go up in ranks, you can go down. Opens, you can just put in time and nothing gets accomplished. It feels very poor. So that's sort of why I want a big restructuring on these, because I feel like there's a lot of work to be done. So my first change, and this ties into a lot of what else I'm going to say, so kind of hold your horses, but I would like to see opens get region locked. So right now, especially the last call people, they're playing opens every day, right? Because they really need to win an open, so they want to maximize their chances. But they're not just playing the NA Open. They're waking up at like whatever time, maybe 6 in the morning, to play the European Open. And then when they lose in that, they go and they play ladder, and then they get ready for the NA Open at night. And I feel like it promotes a really degenerate and unhealthy lifestyle to where people are playing opens all day, every day to try and qualify for tournaments. I think that region locking it at least keeps you to like, okay, I'm going to play one open tonight, and that's fine. Or as I show further, you're not even going to be playing an open a night in my ideal world. But I think that region locking is just important so that people aren't excessively playing and getting burnt out. This will lower the amount of points overall in the HCT, but I don't think that's a problem because it's not like certain people are getting more than others. But this change will make a lot more sense when I propose my second change, which is this. And this is more radical, but I would really like to see opens become a weekly or bi-weekly event rather than a nightly occurrence. And so I have to explain this a lot more. But I think that right now, opens are just like strictly bad for a Hearthstone player to do in terms of EV. Like it is not generally, it is 100% more productive for me to stream anything for 3 hours than play an open off stream for points. Like what? 100%. And that's true with pretty much anyone, even if they have a really small stream and they're trying to grow it, because you need to put in those hours. And it's really hard to stream an open because a reasonable human being in the top 4 of an open is going to go, okay, my opponent's streaming, these points really matter, I'm going to stream snipe him. That's not an unreasonable reaction. I don't think that you can really harp on that person for doing that. I really don't think that that's that ridiculous. So I don't think it's on them. I think, and it's not on the streamer either, because they made the choice. They knew that streaming was important, but they also wanted to play their open, and it creates such a dynamic. It's like patches in Galactic Crawler almost. It just creates this dynamic where you have to do both, and it just feels bad every time it happens. So my proposal is to make opens weekly or bi-weekly. I have no idea what frequency it should be. I know I don't have enough data to really concurrently say. I just know that reducing their frequency by a significant amount is important. And the reasoning for this is that this is going to be really important. But I think they should be reduced to weekly or bi-weekly, region locked, and streamed on the Play Hearthstone channel. Right now, there's like a 3-month drought in between championships and this following prelims in HCT content. And so the Play Hearthstone stream is just dead. I mean, it had HCG, which is on pretty much every week, but in terms of HCT content, it's basically not there. So it's really hard for a casual viewer to follow because it's just every 3 months a different guy wins a tournament and you have no idea what's going on. I think that this would promote the idea that Hearthstone is a more consistent game than people realize and has more skill to it than people realize, because you'd see the same names doing well on these opens every time. They're big Swiss tournaments. Not every single tournament. Like, I've O2'd Swiss tournaments before it happens. But in general, you're going to see Amnesiac doing pretty well, almost making the cut, making top 16 and losing, maybe making a deep run in the top 4. And that's something you can get behind. And maybe it's not me. Maybe it's someone you don't know. And you're watching them, and you're excited to see them do well every week. And you become a fan of them. Like, maybe this is how people break out. It's doing well in these opens. But since they're not streamed right now, and they're every night, there's no significance to winning one. It's just a relief. It feels bad when you lose. Think about this. In an 128 person tournament, it feels terrible to come in second. That's so unintuitive. That's not how tournaments and like anything else work. I've never felt bad about a second place before, except in Open Cups, where it feels miserable, because I knew, because I was in last call running all year, that I needed to play more of them to try and get a first place finish. So with this change, I think if you make them weekly or bi-weekly, and you add a reasonable prize pool, people will care. It will be a real thing if you win an Open. People will be like, oh wow, that's a pretty big accomplishment. That's pretty cool. This guy's somebody to watch. It's way more significant than it is now, where it's just the Twitter post like, oh, won my Open for the month, use these decks, yada yada, 15 retweets, 100 likes, boom, done. I think this would promote player culture really well. I think it would incentivize people to try. It would make it more of an accomplishment. And this will also just reduce the grind by so much, because you can play less and have it matter more, which means that you can focus your time better, and it will reduce burnout by a lot. Because I'm a big proponent of people currently, they just way overplay. I think especially professionals who don't really know what to do with the rest of their time, they way overplay, and I think it's genuinely negatively hurting their play overall. I think it would be significantly better were they to play less and just focus a little more, focus on themselves, focus on things outside of the game. And this would promote that, because you have to play less, but each time you play, it's higher stakes. So you have to think more, you care more, and it's a bigger deal when somebody does well in it. So I think this is a really nice change. But I understand Blizzard's wanting there to be nightly tournament content. So I'm going to bring up the Forbidden, because this might never happen, but I'm sure that they've considered it. I would like to see an in-game tournament mode put in play. And this would more be to supplement the casual audience than anything. There are plenty of ranked 10 people who play in Open Cups because they find them genuinely fun. And that's fine. That's great. There are some people out there who really like Opens. Let them play their Open tournament, but put it in the game. Make it easy. It's not that hard to add a tournament mode. Well, actually, I don't know. It probably is really hard to add a tournament mode. But I feel like Blizzard has the technology to add a tournament mode into the Hearthstone game client. And I would like to see this tournament sort of be a building block for newer players. Maybe you can rank cap it. Like, this is the rank 10 8 p.m. tournament. This is the rank 5 8 p.m. tournament. This is the Legend 8 p.m. tournament. But I would like to see that. And since people are always griping about how it's so hard to be free to play, which, I mean, I don't know. I don't have a great perspective on it, but it's probably reasonable to some extent. Why don't you reward them with packs and gold for doing well in the game? Incentivize them to play your game, enjoy it, and then do well and get rewards from it. And from this, if you win one of these tournaments, or maybe even just within the tournament itself, you can advertise the HCT weekly or bi-weekly tournament and say, this is where you can earn HCT points, and then if you make this number of points, because in my ideal world, the number of points is concrete, you make this number of points, now you're going to preliminaries. If you do well there, you're going to championships. You do well, you're going to the world championships. Like, you can build up a whole storyline in a newer player's head, and it gets them excited to play Hearthstone, which is really the ultimate goal. You want people from the ground up playing your game because of your competitive format. And I think this is a nice supplement while getting rid of the grindiness of Open Cups. Oops. That's supposed to say ladder. That's a nice meme. Alright. I'm not going to fix it. That's too much work. Alright. Well, this is the ladder slide. We'll leave it. We'll leave it be. Alright. So my first change for ladder, and I think this would just reduce grindiness. I think that overall a lot of my changes would just reduce the amount of time you actually have to spend playing. You could still play as much as you want, but you wouldn't feel obligated to play as much as people are right now. Like, I played 400 games in 3 days and 700 games over like 6 in the course of the last week, and I didn't even finish on ladder, but I felt obligated to play that many games, and that just felt bad. So I would like to see the ladder season be extended to 3 months, and as a result, a lot of my changes are going to bring the number of points in HCT overall down, but I don't think that's a problem because it'll be a fair change across all regions, so it'll just be the number of points you need is lower, which is okay. It's not going to make it less of an accomplishment because it's a lower number. Like, in 2015 HCT, I had 150 points because the system was just, it just had a higher point count overall, like all the numbers were higher. It didn't make it more of an accomplishment. I finished 9th in points. Last year I was like, or this year I'm probably going to finish 3rd with like 90. So it's relative. So the fact that the number of points is going down doesn't mean it's less of an accomplishment to do well in the system. But I would like to see them extend ladder, and this actually just feeds into my next change, which is I think that the numbers right now aren't very indicative of what's actually going on. So you can see rank 3 legend, but you don't know where rank 2 legend is. You can play a game on rank 3 and be like, oh, I hope I go to rank 1, but then you're still rank 3, and then you're still rank 3, and then you're still rank 3, and you're just playing into the blue. You have no idea. There is an MMR system, obviously. They need some way to calculate who's ahead and who's behind, but they don't make it visible. And I think that it wouldn't be overwhelming to new players if this only became visible once you were in Legend, because if you're in Legend, you're not a new player anymore, right? So I don't think this would be like abrasive to have a number, whatever it is, 2,000, 3,000, 3,335, whatever it is. But I think that this would be important because you'd actually have an idea of where you are in proximity to other people. Consequently with this, I would like to see rank changes become much more incremental and predictable. And I think that, honestly, they are. The MMR is probably very similar in wins and losses no matter where you are. It's just when you're down in the numbers, it feels like huge swings. You go from 500 to 400 as opposed to going from 5 to 4. And it just feels like you're making more progress lower, but it's really not. The MMR is much closer down there. Or rather, the MMR is, there's just more people within the same realm of MMR, so you pass more people when you play. But I think visible MMR would make it so much more realistic to know what you have to do. And it would make laddering way less of like this mental game where you feel bad even though you're doing well at lower legend because you can't seem to break through at high legend. I think you'd just have a more upfront idea of where you're at. And this sort of leads into my third point, which is I think that in the same way that I'd like to see there be a number of points that qualifies you to prelims rather than having to be in the top whatever of your region, I'd like to see that instead of being like top 25 for points, I think that if you reach this level of MMR and stay there, then you have this finish for the month. And I don't think it should be easy to get points either. I think you should have to play the game a good amount, but I'd like to see there not be decay in MMR, and I'd like to see it be pretty solid. Like, I'd like to see it be consistent when you win and lose with MMR for the most part. Obviously, there can be some slight fluctuation based off of who you're playing against, how low or high their MMR is, but I'd like things to be pretty consistent so you kind of know what you're getting into. But this way, it would feel like you're trying to play the ladder, not play the people on the ladder. Like, it's so common that people are playing against each other for rank 1, and they queue into each other, and they're like counter-queuing each other at rank 1 and 2 legend with like 20 minutes left in the season. And I just don't think that's like a healthy thing to promote, as opposed to just if you put in the work, you can do well, so can this other guy who also put in the work. I don't understand what the problem with like joint success is, and I think this would promote it a lot better. This last change is really simple. Counter-queuing is terrible for the game. It feels so bad when it happens to you. I can't imagine this is that logistically difficult. I think all you have to do is make it so you can't play the same person twice in a row. You can play them twice in like an hour or whatever, but I think that once you play them, you should not be able to queue into them again. And it would make it so much healthier. It feels so bad to win a favorable, and then you play, and then you're like, oh my god, I forgot to stop. I'm going to get counter-queued. And then they counter-queue you, and you lose, and you just feel so bad, because it feels really bad, trust me. So I'd like to see that change as well. I've been talking a lot, dude. Alright, let's see. I got one more topic to go through. So I don't have any notes on this. This is more just me talking. But I think that the reason why these changes are sort of coming to prominence and why I think it's important to iterate them is that people just generally are seeming more burnt out than they ever have. And there's a lot of backlash on social media and on Twitter. People are like, this is a problem, this has to change, this isn't healthy for us, all this and that and the other thing. And it's totally reasonable. Some people are just feeling burned out. I will say that I think that some people are sort of forcing themselves to play when it's okay to just not want to be a competitor in the game but still care about how good you are. I think that's totally reasonable. No one's forcing you to play an HCT, but I understand that people care and they want to play. And if that's the case, which it is, I think it's important that we continue to promote better player culture and everything. But I think that player health is sort of why these changes are coming about. It's player health and like equity of the system, fairness and qualification and all that, fairness in preliminary situations. But I sort of talked about it a little bit at the beginning. I really think that the community's attitude towards all this stuff is really fucking bad. Like, really, really bad. I don't know. irate Twitter posts at 3:30 in the morning after not qualifying for prelims by 1 point, and I'm just like, it's not a good way to go about something like this. That's not going to bring change. Since when has yelling at a computer ever brought about change in a productive way? This is what you do. What I just did was not particularly difficult. This took about 40 minutes. I have some time left. I'm going to continue to talk. But this wasn't hard. This took me 2 hours to set up. About an hour of thought went into it, hour or two. I talked to some people. I talked to Chalky. I talked to the Rat. I talked to our Skype group. Like, I sort of went through some stuff, but this really wasn't that hard to set up for me. And I'm in a position of influence, obviously, so it means more coming from me than from a random Hearthstone person, but you can still put in the time to formulate your thoughts in a more cohesive manner than, this game sucks, I didn't make prelims. That's not productive. We can't promote that as the general player culture. I don't think that's acceptable in any way. So a big goal of what I did today was just to show you that this is sort of how you should go about trying to bring about change. It's not super complicated. Just formulate your thoughts and give your opinions in a reasonable manner. I don't think that this was that crazy, what I did. It was pretty straightforward, honestly. It really wasn't that hard, and I think I did a pretty good job. It was simple. Like, obviously my production skills aren't through the roof. I used text from OBS, and I used my cam and Twitter in every picture because I didn't know what else to put in the slides. But it came out alright, and I got my point across, which is the big thing. It doesn't have to be a Hollywood production. But I really don't like the player culture that we have on Twitter, which is just more or less complaining, or it's when you make prelims, it's like joking about how this was so dumb, I had to do this and that, I hate the system. Like, okay, you hate the system, but what are your solutions? I get that. Nobody likes open cups, but saying you hate open cups and then liking everybody's tweets who say they hate open cups, that's not getting us anywhere, whoever you are. Like, that's not productive. We should be talking in a constructive manner. I would like to see more interaction between the community and Blizzard, but I don't really blame Blizzard for not wanting to interact with a community that just says they're idiots all the time. Why would they? They're not. It's their job. They're fine at their job. We have empirical and anecdotal evidence. Well, no, we don't have empirical. My bad. I misspoke. We have anecdotal evidence as to what we think would improve the system and why. They have empirical data and evidence that would sort of prove us wrong or prove us right, and we can sort of work towards a middle ground and find some solutions that make sense for both parties, because ultimately Blizzard also has a vested interest in making HCT better. So they obviously want to do the best things, and I think that if we go about things in a more constructive manner, they will listen to us more and want to work with players more in the future. So I think that this is important, what I did. I hope that this sets more of a precedent for how to present your thoughts. It doesn't have to be a show. It doesn't have to be anything. You can type up a Google Doc. I did that as planning. It's not that hard. Like, just type out your thoughts. Even if your English skills aren't that great, whatever. Just type it in your native language, or type it in not great English. That's fine. You're putting yourself out there. That's brave. That's great for the scene. You're a hero if you do that. Well, we're playing children's card game, but you're doing your part. And I think that Blizzard would appreciate it. But I think that we have to get away from this culture of just assuming that Blizzard doesn't really know what they're doing, which is sort of implied when we're just yelling about the game without offering solutions, because it's like, all right, let's work with them. Let's make the system better. Because bottom line, everybody wants the system to be better. And it's improved so much. 2015 was the worst shit ever. Upon reflection, I hated the 2015 season. It was terrible. You know why? Because I played ladder every month of that season. I finished rank 1, I finished top 10, I finished top 20. I put in so much time, and I lost. I was 9th in points, and top 8 got a double bye in the tournament. And you know who had more points than me? I'm not going to rag on him because he's my boy, but Trump had more points than me. You know how Trump had 100 of his 170 points when I had 150, all from ladder? 100 of his points came from a 16-man invitational tournament that was dubbed a major. That's obviously not good. We've made progress. We've continued. They've tried things. They understand that opens don't feel very good to play. They understand that ladder can be frustrating. They're trying to fix things. Well, we have to work with them. The system has gotten better every year, and if we continue to be constructive and work with them on this on a reasonable way, it's going to only get better. So that's like the big takeaway from all this. You can disagree with my thoughts. That's great. Explain to me why. Maybe we have a conversation about it. Maybe I come up with something better. You come up with something better. We come together. We come up with something better than what I proposed. But the point is that we're thinking in a constructive way. We're not bitching on Twitter like 12-year-olds. All right. That was about 45 minutes. That's pretty much what I expected. Maybe I expected it to go a little longer. I'll do some Q&A now. I probably got some people to tweet at me. If not, I can just look at chat. But let's see. I have a Q&A slide. Let's go to that. So yeah, again, just tweet at me if you want your question answered, and I'll answer it to the best of my ability. If there's anything you want me to go over as well, like a clarification, just tweet at me with that as well. I won't do this for too long, but I'll do it until I exhaust questions and I'm sitting here awkwardly. Let's see. So one person asked, why aren't playoffs Swiss only and cut to top 4? And why can't the playoffs start on Friday and have the Tavern Heroes play online beforehand? I think that Blizzard's reasoning for that is that if the Tavern Heroes had to play online, and I have no idea how that system works, so I could just be totally wrong, but I'd imagine they want them to play live because it sort of validates their achievement. And I think that that's reasonable. It sort of gives them a taste of what it's like to be a competitive player, because generally Tavern Heroes aren't going to be as good as the average legend or the average qualified player. Like I've lost to Tavern Heroes before. It happens. Sometimes they're quite good, but I think that Blizzard just sort of wants to validate their achievement. And the reason they don't cut to top 4, and I talked to Drew about this at World Championships last year when we were discussing it, because he sort of proposed the format that we have now. And my initial thought was, why is there a single elim match? And he said, well, it's pretty exciting to watch. And you can't disagree with that. I think that there is some amount of hype that you want to retain in there being a single elimination match to decide who wins and who goes home. But at the same time, it does feel really bad from a player standpoint to make it out of Swiss, do really well, and then you're like, I have a 55% chance to win. 45% of the time, I'm really disappointed. It does feel bad, so I'm sure there's a way. Like I proposed some changes that I think would have improved the system in terms of cutting the top 8, but I think that we're continuing to work on that. I think it's a tough situation because you do want your game to be more exciting, and I think that it promotes excitement in a good way, but at the same time it sort of invalidates people's achievements. So it's a tough line to cross for sure. Let's see. One person asked an easy one. Do I think all ladder games started before midnight on the last day should count? I don't think that it has to be that as a solution, but I don't like rope queuing very much. I think that it creates a very weird dynamic where people are trying to be ethical and not do it, and then other people are being reasonable and doing it, and they're gaining an edge, and then people expect them to feel bad for it, and it's like, well, they're operating very much so within the rules of the system, so this isn't that unreasonable. It's a tough... I mean, I don't think it's that hard for Blizzard to fix. I think if every game started before then counted, that would be fine. I think that would be a fine solution. I don't really think there would be many other ways. I could think about it more. Maybe there's a more clever way to do it. But yeah, I think that would be fine. I'd like to see rope queuing go away. I think most people would agree with that. I don't think anyone really likes the dynamic of rope queuing. It's just everyone does it because why wouldn't you? We're playing for money and points, and this is really important, so you're going to take your edges where you can get them. Let's see. One person asked, why 3 months of ladder? Could I clarify? I don't see the benefit. Wouldn't it just be down to the same stressful last few days? Well, with how I proposed it, let's see if I can go back to ladder. So here, I want to see MMR changes become less fluctuating, and I don't want there to be any decay, which I don't think there is now. It's just people naturally pass you. But I think that this way your MMR doesn't have to correlate to other people's MMR, basically. You just have your own MMR, and you're trying to boost it and lower it accordingly. So if you got to a certain point, it wouldn't be you get passed by this many people and then you have to play, and you get to the point of MMR where you could take a finish, and I'd like that to take a considerable amount of playing and time, but you could get to an MMR point where you could stop playing, and then you could be like, alright, this is a finish no matter what, because I don't decay and I don't get passed by people. So I think that would be better, because it would feel like you could play earlier in the season and have it matter rather than the last few days scramble, which is very stressful and feels bad to be a part of, because you can work hard in the early season and then still get kind of screwed over by the last few days, and you can get really lucky and scramble to the top in the last day even though you didn't play all season. It just creates like a better dynamic, I think, if playing throughout the season is rewarded equally, which is what I would like about this, but I'm sure that there are some flaws in what I proposed, and I wouldn't be opposed to people sort of improving upon this idea. Let's see. Wouldn't a ladder where you ban an archetype or class be a solid option to change the ladder? I don't think that that's a good solution. I like playing natural Hearthstone on ladder. Like, I think banning, it's just, how would that even work logistically? Like, if you're banning this deck, do you play on the ladder where other people are choosing to ban? I feel like that's so confusing and roundabout, and I just don't think it's very necessary. I don't think that that's the core of the problem. I think if counter queuing goes away, then that problem really goes away in general. So I don't think I would like to see that change really at all. Really not that many questions. I don't have that much more to say, honestly. Like I said, this is pretty simple. It's pretty concise. I just think that this is an important message to send. I'm pretty happy with how it came out. I could have obviously produced this in a more... I should go back to my Q&A slide. I could have produced this in a more flashy way, and I probably would have if I had put in more time, but I think that this got the point across. I think the simplicity in and of itself is kind of important for people to realize, but I had some ideas, and I just wanted to present them. It wasn't rocket science. Let's see. Yeah, that's the whole point, though, guy in chat. I think that if you had set points in where Blizzard said at this echelon you get this number of points, and at this echelon you get this number of points, and so on, and they had a cap to it, people wouldn't feel like they had to endlessly grind. If Blizzard didn't say which MMR to be at for points, then obviously it would create a totally unhealthy system where people are just constantly trying to boost their MMR. But I think if they gave them reasonable goals, then it would be nice. I think that they would reduce the grindiness. It would at least make it so that when you're playing, it feels like you're accomplishing more during the early season, whereas really in the early season, the only thing you want to do is get legend quickly so you don't start out at a low rank, and then you could really wait until like the 25th to play, and there's no consequence to it. And I think that just promotes like a really unhealthy culture where you're spending like 2 weeks not playing Hearthstone, and then you're burned out super hard, and then it's like optimal to play at the beginning, but you're burned out, so you don't want to play, so you get into this bad cycle. And I've heard people talk about this where they're playing a ton at the end, and then they're burned out, so they take a nice break, and then they come back and they have to play a ton at the end again, and they're still burned out. And it's just, you never really get out of that cycle once you're in it. Let's see. I don't think there's much more. I'm not getting any more real questions. I'm not going to try and milk this for anything, for the most part. I really just wanted to get my point across. In terms of uploading this, any Redditors out there, I don't use Reddit. I would like somebody to put this on Reddit, this VOD. It doesn't have to be fancy. I don't care about Reddit points, so whoever wants to do it can, but I think this is an important message. I'd really like to see Reddit take a look at this at least, because I think this is more coherent than a lot of other things on the topic. I'm pretty happy with how I kept it pretty objective. If there are any more questions, I'll take them, but I think that I'm more or less done. I'm getting added in chat a little bit. What would happen if too many people reach the cap? Yeah, that would be a difficult point. So you'd want to... That's obviously like the biggest problem is what do you set the point cap at? And I have no idea. I don't have any evidence for that, and it may just be possible that it's so hard to do that that's not a reasonable change. But I would like to see it at least explored. Like, you sort of have to fundamentally make mistakes to get better at anything, and I don't think that the system's any different. And I think people would understand if Blizzard was trying to make it better and they accidentally took a step back. That happens. It's fine. That happens all the time in everything. So I don't think Blizzard... I think Blizzard might be a little afraid to make mistakes right now. And obviously making mistakes is poor for their brand. I understand why, but I don't think it would be that bad as a lasting implication. Alright. I think I'm done. I have no intention to play Hearthstone today. I'm on a nice break. I'm not going to stream a card review because not all the cards are out. I think there's the card reveal tomorrow on Kibler's channel, so you guys should go watch that for sure. I'm going to probably do a card review at some point, either after he's done streaming and all the cards are out, or the day after before the set drops, because I'm traveling on Thursday, and I'm gone that weekend, but I might stream from where I'm at. But thanks everyone for tuning in. I appreciate it. I enjoyed doing this. I think this was really important for the community to see. I think this was good content. I'm happy that I was able to bring about my thoughts in a more constructive manner than I tend to, because usually you catch me when I'm playing ladder, and ladder is really frustrating a lot of the time. But I think this was important, if nothing else. Let's see. And I hope that Blizzard takes note of this. I have friends at Blizzard. I'll make sure that they take a look at this. I'll probably talk to them privately. But I think that the big takeaway from this is that our opinions do matter, but they need to be presented in a more reasonable way than yelling on Twitter. This is a good example of one way to do it. Another way you could do it is just write a Google Doc or write something in long prose, something reasonable. But I think this was important. I'm happy with this, how this came out. I think I'm going to find someone to host, and then I'm going to call it a day. I'll see you guys next time.